the way in which it's galvanized a whole community of schools and others to work in the interests of young people. One situation that we faced last year was with a family who needed support, but we were finding it hard to find a way in. It was a child who was of exam age, a year 11 student, and we realized that through our funding, particularly the free time funding, that we could actually set up coaching beyond the school day for that particular student. And there's no hard and fast way of saying, it was the coaching that made the difference. But she is a student who is now back in our sixth form. And there were certainly times last year when I was thinking, I know what your dream is, I know what you want, but how can we assist you? So that is one that particularly brings me cheer, because it does seem that there's a direct causal link between that extra bit of support at the right time, coaching to give her the strength to own her success herself, and hey presto, she's in the sixth form and is doing well. There are so many aspects to this, but I think that probably the one that would be most noticed and noticeable would be the link, our drop-in clinics at the John of Gaunt School, where we have practitioners on hand every Monday for the young people to turn to with particular needs, requirements. And our early success with that meant that when we were bidding for the building of the hub that we're sitting in at the moment, that bid was successful because it was based on existing success. The core people are the head teachers in the schools and their teams, of course. A head teacher is just a conductor, if you like, at times. So it's the schools centrally, but it's also people like the local council and the youth team, the youth work teams. But it's like the most of the work will go on within the schools, and extra activities put on through the free time funding for the children who find it hard to afford. So it's very much originally it was called Extended Schools, and now it's Extended Services, but the core of it, I believe, still remains school-based. I think one of the things that the government would very much like, or governments would very much like, would be hard data that says we've put this amount of money in and this has been the outcome in terms of raising attainment. It's very hard to come to those conclusions. And actually the very type of people that are working on this type of thing are often people who are very much child-centered, who realize that a child's success is very multifaceted. It's not down to one particular thing. But my belief is that we have to do everything in our power to create schools where students, children, are happy and they like to be. And a core element of that has to be that students, children, feeling supported and nurtured. And that can't have a negative impact. It can only have a positive impact on children and therefore on their outcomes. But I personally would hate to think that we're measuring this amount of money that the schools have had, and this has been the outcome in terms of exam results. There's far, far more to it than that. There are certain key personnel within the schools who make this happen. Within John of Gaunt School, it's very much Jane, who's the Extended Schools Coordinator for Trowbridge. But you've also got throughout Trowbridge the PSAs who are working with families, again trying to remove barriers to their children's success. Working with families is a core part of this, a crucial element, because a child's success is to some extent dictated by their school, but it's in the home that the major impact is made. And I think, again, culturally that's very important, because if parents feel that they are supported in supporting their children, then once again the wider community becomes one which is based on support, rather than a community which is which is based on judgment. My personal belief is that as a head teacher of a large school, I need to believe that I'm doing what is right for the children. And therefore, by having the extended services structure supporting the school and supporting the children within the school, I believe we're doing what is right. If I had a school where what we were basically interested in, above all, was being an examinations machine, I wouldn't invest as much in that as I do in believing that through welfare and through concern for students, then you can actually bring about massive transformation in their lives. So the simple belief that I'm doing what is right means that the school will improve, because there's no discontinuity between action and belief. The two are joined up. And that was very much voiced in our recent Ofsted report, where we got many outstanding features, and it included the welfare structures that are in place, and the enrichment that we bring about through the extended services programme. The most crucial thing for sustaining most of what we do is actually what I've discussed in terms of the belief that this is really important, that it's too important to let go. And having the relationships across Trowbridge and core personnel within, say, the steering group who hold that belief as well, then it's not something that we're going to let go lightly, if at all. It may be that we have to rationalise and focus down on key things that we do that we totally believe in. But I talk about sustainability of spirit rather than necessarily sustainability of funding, because I think if you have the spirit for something and you believe enough in it, then you will find ways. The problem there, of course, is that we are a school. We are expected, and I expected of my staff, to have good results. I am the leader of the school. I hopefully drive the improvement forward. So there's a question of how much time can be given to extended services work, which will take me away from being in the school, talking to students, talking to staff. So we have to be careful about the balance there, and that the extended services programme doesn't become a drain on the energy of the school leaders. I believe it'll be absolutely vital to maintain funding for the extended services coordinator within the area, because they very much are the lead person, the driving force behind it. Without that, it would be very, very difficult to see how the programs, the ideas can actually be pulled together to make a whole. Children and young people are engaged in productive activities, and very often those activities are linked to healthy lifestyles. A recent example of its success has been children who have come into the secondary schools and their parents have already been asking about the free time funding. So it's becoming more embedded within the culture. And it basically means that those parents are saying, yes, we still want our child to go to taekwondo or swimming or whatever it might be. And, we hear so much these days that about children on the streets and, not enough police and whatever it might be. But if the young people who otherwise would have been disengaged from these activities for funding reasons are engaged and get a sense of self-worth and self-esteem and belief in themselves through doing diving lessons or something else, then that can actually spill over into other aspects of their life, a more can-do belief in themselves. If they can do it there, then they can transfer that way of thinking into other areas of their lives. I think for too many people today, we live in a target-driven world. And whilst it's important in many areas to have targets, when you're dealing with children and young adults, it's just great to know that you're doing something sometimes which actually isn't necessarily linked to a target. It's right because it's right to look after people. And that I think is a very, very important thing. And it gives me strength to know that as a culture we have a school and a community which actually thinks that way. I think that an important aspect of extended service is actually knowing who you are serving and identifying where the needs are the greatest, and therefore focusing your attention on those particular areas. So within Trowbridge, for example, the identification of positive parenting, the idea of engaging the young people in positive activities are very, very important aspects of that. But it is directed where over time and where data shows that those needs are the greatest. I think in some ways it's summed up by the words extended services. That if we view every child as an island, unconnected to others and then the wider community, then we're making a massive mistake. That every child and every family and every school, it's all interconnected. So it's very much an extended network, all of which is there to support the children. One of the greatest pleasures I glean from my role is actually being able to be one of the lead people in this and working with people who are of like mind, which in itself is a privilege, but in itself is also very energizing.